Star Wars has become famous for its side and background characters. Books, comics, and reference materials have given names and backstories for countless randos throughout every Star Wars movie. Characters the fandom has come to call Glup Shittos. Today I'm giving them the focus, and I'll be covering the most essential side characters from A New Hope. Ramus Antilles was the captain of the Tantive 4 when it was captured above Tatooine shortly before the Battle of Yavin. He served House Organa of Alderaan during the Clone Wars, where he was the captain of the Tantive 3. He was present for the rescue of Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi from Order 66, and after they went into hiding, he took the droids R2-D2 and C-3PO, wiping the memory of the latter. 1 year after the rise of the Empire, he took charge of the Tantive 4 and was part of the mission that brought Ahsoka Tano into the fledgling rebellion. As Leia Organa reached the age of 16, he accompanied her on relief missions. They were still working together 3 years later at the Battle of Scarif, and Ramus narrowly escaped the clutches of Darth Vader with the plans to the Death Star. But he knew they would be tracked thanks to their malfunctioning hyperdrive, which was barely repaired in the hangar of the Profundity. Captain Antilles jumped to several planets before reaching Tatooine, hoping to shake the Empire, but they were caught above the desert planet anyway. His ship was boarded, and Ramus was killed by Darth Vader himself. R5-D4 was first introduced in A New Hope, but he had a storied history before and after the events of the film. He was seen on Tatooine immediately before the Clone Wars, wandering the streets of Mos Espa. It's unclear if he ever ventured off of Tatooine, but he was referred to as a veteran of the rebellion by Carson Teva. It's possible the pilot could have been referring to R5's assistance in delivering the Death Star plans to Obi-Wan Kenobi. When R2-D2 was captured by the Jawas, the little astromech told R5-D4 about his mission, and when R5 was purchased by the Lars family, he sabotaged himself to make sure R2 would get away from the Sandcrawler. Shortly after, the Jawas were killed by Imperial stormtroopers, and R5 wandered into the desert, hoping to find an owner. It could be that during this time, he more directly served with the Rebel Alliance and met Carson Teva. Either way, the droid eventually found his way into Peli Motto's hangar on Mos Eisley, where he worked with the mechanic until she passed him along to Din Djarin. R5's greatest adventures took him to Mandalore, reunited him with Carson Teva, and helped him find his courage in epic battles against pirates and Imperial mouse droids. Owen Lars was the son of Klieg and Aka Lars. He was born away from Tatooine, but after the death of his mother, Klieg returned to his homeworld and his family's moisture farm. Owen grew up there, where he met Beru Whitesun, who was working to free the slaves on Tatooine. She met Shmi Skywalker and conspired to free her with the help of Owen and Klieg. They tricked her owner Watto into losing Shmi in a bet, and she was freed. She and Klieg fell in love and married, making Owen her stepson, as well as the stepbrother of Anakin Skywalker. Unfortunately, Shmi would be captured and killed by Tusken Raiders, and Klieg passed soon after. Owen and Beru married and adopted their nephew Luke when he was brought to their home by the Jedi in hiding Obi-Wan Kenobi. They raised him as their own, bravely defending him against members of the Jedi Hunters, the Inquisitorius, as well as bounty hunters and other attacks on their farm. Obi-Wan Kenobi also attempted to help, but Owen kept the man at a distance, fearing Luke would share the same fate as his father, Anakin, dead or worse. Akobo was the name of the Tusken Raider who attacked Luke Skywalker in the Junland Wastes in A New Hope. He and his cousins were members of a Yark's Tusken clan and had recently killed a young krayt dragon as a rite of passage. Feeling emboldened by his victory, he and his cousins successfully attacked Luke, knocking him unconscious. But they were scared off by the call of a krayt dragon, fearing it was a queen seeking vengeance after the one they had killed. Later, Akoba recalled seeing a hooded figure and wondered how he had not only mimicked the call of a krayt dragon, but also the feeling of dread that caused him to flee. Wolf Yularen was a human from Coruscant who served as a Republic naval officer. He made a name for himself by defeating a tactician named Admiral Trench in the Battle of Malastare Narrows. During the Clone Wars, Yularen was also an admiral, fighting alongside General Anakin Skywalker. Together they faced and defeated Trench again above the planet Christophsis. The two worked together through the entirety of the conflict, and when the Empire rose in place of the Republic, Yularen remained a part of the Imperial Navy, but he eventually chose a different career path, joining the Imperial Security Bureau as a high-ranking colonel with a direct line to the Emperor himself. He mentored up-and-coming officers in both the ISB and the Navy, including Alexander Callis and the Chiss officer Thrawn, who himself would rise to the rank of Grand Admiral. Despite his high rank, Yularen was unaware of the construction of the superweapon called the Death Star, only learning of it shortly before its finishing touches. He was on board the space station for a meeting of the Imperial Joint Chiefs when it was destroyed by Luke Skywalker and the Rebel Alliance. General Cassio Tag was part of the prestigious House of Tag, who were the owners of the Tag Corporation and frequent collaborators with the Empire. Cassio joined the Imperial Army shortly after its creation and within 5 years found himself holding the rank of general. He became a member of the Joint Chiefs and was one of the few voices of dissent warning against the overconfidence brought on by the Death Star. But he was not on board for its destruction, having been sent to investigate the rumors of a rebel base on the planet Dantooine. His foresight was rewarded with a new promotion to the rank of Grand General, placing him in charge of the Imperial Army and even Darth Vader. He allied himself with a scientist named Silo, who secretly plotted to steal the newly built Super Star Destroyer Executor and launch an attack on the Emperor. He was thwarted by Darth Vader, and the Emperor demoted Tag for his failures. The Sith apprentice choked the general to death almost immediately after. Admiral Mahdi was from the planet Siswana in the Outer Rim, but his family's wealth and status helped him become a prominent member of the Galactic Empire. He served on his flagship Steel Talon until the year 14 BBY, when he became a member of the Imperial Joint Chiefs. Prior to the Battle of Yavin, Mahdi was not only an admiral, but held the title Chief of the Imperial Navy and was a major proponent of the Death Star. His confidence in the weapon led him to go so far as to mock Darth Vader to his face, which nearly got him killed. Grand Moff Tarkin ordered his release, but the admiral died shortly after in the Battle of Yavin, which saw the destruction of the Death Star. General Hurst Romati was a veteran of the Clone Wars, fighting on the side of the Republic, who remained to serve the Empire after it rose to power. He was one of the earliest members of the group that would eventually become the Joint Chiefs of the Imperial military, attending a meeting on Eriadu with Wilhuff Tarkin, Orson Krennic, Royce Hemlock, and more. He had a strong relationship with Tarkin, who became a Grand Moff within the Empire and oversaw much of the creation of the Death Star. Romati was often at Tarkin's side, so he was present for the destruction of Jedha City, the Battle of Scarif, and the Joint Chiefs meeting on the superweapon shortly before the Battle of Yavin. But Romati had made his way off of the Death Star before its destruction and continued to serve the Empire. He was present for the auction of Han Solo's carbonite slab, but failed to secure the prize. At the Battle of Endor, he served on the Super Star Destroyer Executor and was killed when the ship crashed into the second Death Star. Prior to the Battle of Yavin, Chief Muradmin Bast was a general in the Imperial Army. He had a good reputation as a patient and thoughtful officer and was one of the few members of the Joint Chiefs who saw the threat posed by the Rebel Alliance. After Obi-Wan Kenobi's disappearance on the Death Star, Chief Bast questioned Darth Vader about the man's identity. Shortly after, he encouraged Grand Moff Tarkin to consider evacuating the superweapon as a safety measure, but he was scolded for the suggestion and died on the Death Star. But if you watch the holiday special, you will see Chief Bast again, because a deleted scene from A New Hope was reused for television with some of the dialogue altered, which raises some fun questions about whether Bast survived or had a twin brother, but no, he is dead and gone. Thigrin Dan and the Modal Nodes was the name of the band that performed in the Mos Eisley Cantina in A New Hope. Its members included Doik Nats on the Durinian Beshnaquel, Ichabel Gaunt on the Double Jossamer, Lirin Karn on the Clue Horn, Nayland Cheel on the Bandfill, Sun Eel Ide on the drums, Tech Moore on the Omnibox, Tedin Daha on the fanfare, and frontman Thigrin Dan, who also played the Clue Horn. They were most well known for their song Mad About Me, which was remixed and replayed on Batu at Oga's Cantina by DJ Rex. But they had several other songs including Dune Sea Special, Modal Notes, Tears of Aquana, Worm Case, Solitary World, and the sequential passage of chronological intervals. Boshek was a Force-sensitive Corellian who held several jobs including pilot, smuggler, and swoop racer, winning first place in the Malastare Classic when he was young. He was clearly a talented pilot who was hired to make several Kessel runs, stealing spice over the course of his career. He developed a strong reputation on Tatooine and briefly discussed transporting Obi-Wan Kenobi to Alderaan shortly before the Battle of Yavin. He declined the offer, but introduced the old man to an associate of his, the Wookiee Chewbacca. Boshek continued to operate as a pilot and smuggler beyond the Galactic Civil War, and was nearly killed at a summit on Kijimi held by the leader of the Spice Runners, Zeva Bliss. His life was saved by an adolescent Poe Dameron. Wooher was the name of the human bartender of Chalmun's Cantina during the Galactic Civil War. He survived a traumatizing attack during the Clone Wars and witnessed the deaths of his parents at the hands of battle droids. He developed a hatred for droids and was responsible for installing the droid detector on the cantina doors at his job. On the other hand, Wooher greatly respected the Jedi Order since one of them saved his life from the same battle droid attack that killed his parents. He took his job seriously and studied the biologies of many species so he could serve them appropriate drinks. The Tonica sisters were infamous criminals that operated throughout the galaxy and were known to the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars. At that time, they were wanted for the murder of a guard they killed while escaping prison. They were associates of Lando Calrissian and Han Solo, and were familiar with the Millennium Falcon. Right before the Battle of Yavin, they considered capturing Solo and collecting on Jabba the Hutt's bounty, but decided instead to steal his ship and escape Tatooine. They were thwarted by Jabba himself, who was waiting for Solo in Docking Bay 94, where the Falcon was parked. Danik Jericho was an Anzadi, a feared people that could feed on the life of other species thanks to hidden tendrils that extended from their faces, allowing them to feed on their victims. Jericho was about 1,000 years old by the time of the Empire. He killed countless beings, choosing murderers, thieves, and other criminals as his victims. He found work within the criminal underworld as a highly paid assassin. He was lightly Force-sensitive, and many Anzadis seemed to share the trait, having at least some form of telepathy. Cabe was a small Chadra-fan patron of Chalmun's Cantina who was present when Luke Skywalker first met Han Solo. She was a thief who would eavesdrop on other customers so she could steal their valuables, but she seemed to only be concerned with gaining enough credits to continue her drinking habit. She even lived in the tunnels underneath the cantina with the Tal's Muftak. He had been abandoned on Tatooine as a newborn and grew up to become a pickpocket and small-time spice dealer. He and Cabe paid rent to Akmina, the night shift bartender. During one of their scams, she and Muftak stole a clue horn from Figrin Dan and the modal nodes. They had hoped to use it to pay off a chain of debts that connected back to Greedo, but their problems were solved when the Rodian was shot by Han Solo. Momau Nadan was an Ithorian resident of Tatooine who was present when Luke Skywalker first entered the Mos Eisley Cantina. He was sadly an exile from his homeworld of Ithor because he shared his people's agricultural secrets with the Galactic Empire, who threatened to destroy the planet if he didn't. He made his home outside of Mos Eisley in a secret garden he created and tended, and used it to hide rebel operatives that visited the desert world. According to legends, his exile eventually ended, and he was allowed to return to Ithor. Dr. Cornelius Evazan was a cosmetic surgeon who earned the death sentence on 12 systems thanks to horrible experiments on people like the Decraniated. They were cybernetic slaves that were built to be completely subservient. Evazan initially created them for Dryden Voss of Crimson Dawn, but they were also seen on worlds like Jeddah. He worked alongside the Aqualish Ponda Baba, who once rescued the Doctor from a bounty hunter. Together, they left a trail of victims across the galaxy and were pursued by a Milvanian lawman named Tam Posla. The pair bit off more than they could chew on Tatooine, where Ponda lost his arm in a confrontation with Obi-Wan Kenobi. They were somehow separated in the aftermath. Evazan took on a new identity, but was still arrested by the Empire. In disguise, he manipulated the rogue archaeologist Dr. Afra into helping him escape. They reunited with Ponda Baba, and Evazan planted a bomb in Afra for entertainment. He watched her actions from a remote location and created a cybernetic arm as a replacement for his friend. They were briefly captured by bounty hunters, but they broke free once more to continue their horrific experiments. Greedo was a Rodian bounty hunter that was born on Rhodia, but had come to live on Tatooine at an early age. He got himself beat up by a young Anakin Skywalker after accusing the human of cheating in the Bunta Eve Classic. By the time of the Clone Wars, he worked as a bounty hunter for Jabba the Hutt and was responsible for the kidnapping of a senator's daughter. He worked alongside Han Solo and Chewbacca to steal the urn of one of Jabba's rivals, which resulted in Chewie's arrest. After an argument, Greedo shot Han, left him for dead, and took the Millennium Falcon as his own. Solo recovered, rescued Chewbacca, and violently took their ship back from the Rodian, although they did not kill him. Shortly before the events of A New Hope, Greedo was part of another botched job involving the theft of Ki-Adi-Mundi's lightsaber. Jabba's patience wore thin, but the crime lord gave him one final chance, sending the Rodian to collect the bounty on Han Solo. Greedo met his demise, confronting his old rival. Garen Dan was a Kubaz from the planet Kubindi who was forced to work for the Galactic Empire. He was deceived and kidnapped from his home and trained to become a spy. His people were valued in that role because they could understand several forms of nonverbal communication. Garen Dan learned that his planet was under constant threat of orbital bombardment and reluctantly worked for his captors, hoping to eventually gain enough credits as a spy to buy a ride home to liberate his people. Unfortunately, that put him at odds with members of the rebellion, and he sold valuable information to the Empire. Did you know the stormtrooper who bonks his head on the Death Star has a backstory? TD-110's real name was Wanton, and he served as a stormtrooper commander in the Empire. He was on Tatooine and was mind-tricked by Obi-Wan Kenobi as he searched for R2-D2 and C-3PO, who were right in front of him. When the Millennium Falcon escaped the planet, he and his unit were called to the Death Star, and Wanton suffered from a headache thanks to the mind trick, so he temporarily passed his command to another soldier. While he was out of it, he failed to notice the low-hanging door and walked directly into it. When the Falcon escaped again, he was removed from his post on the Death Star for his many mistakes, which ironically spared his life. He was stationed back on Tatooine, where he was miserable. He eventually wound up serving in the First Order, and he died during the Battle of Starkiller Base. Omi was the name of the Dianoga who was kept in the Death Star's trash compactor. Her species was sentient, and Omi specifically was lightly Force-sensitive. She was captured by the Empire on her homeworld Vodran and moved to the Death Star to help break down organic garbage. When Luke Skywalker fell into the Masher, she was drawn to his own Force sensitivity and inadvertently baptized him during her attack. She fled when the trash compactor activated and died shortly after when the Death Star was destroyed, although she believed she would be reincarnated. Vanden Willard was a general in the Rebel Alliance during the Battle of Yavin. He was an Alderaanian spy that worked for House Organa, who came to work closely with Jan Dodonna. He continued to help lead the rebellion for a year after the destruction of the Death Star until the fleet gathered at the Mako Ta shipyards. But their location was given to the Empire by a spy, and Darth Vader's Death Squadron arrived to decimate his enemies. Willard's ship was one of the first to be destroyed by the Super Star Destroyer Executor. Jan Dodonna served the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars, stationed on the Venator-class Star Destroyer Guardian. He remained with the Empire for a short time, earning the rank of captain on an Imperial Star Destroyer, but he quickly defected when he recognized how terrible this new government was. He was an early leader of the growing rebellion, and worked as the commander of Masasi Group. As a general, he cooperated with other cells like Phoenix Squadron, which nearly led to his destruction when the rebel base on Atollon was discovered by Grand Admiral Thrawn. Dodonna escaped, and the survivors of Phoenix Squadron joined him on Yavin. There, he was in charge of the briefing for rebel pilots before the Battle of Yavin, and he orchestrated their evacuation after the destruction of the Death Star. The rebellion continued to grow, and their fleet mustered at the Mako Ta shipyards about 1 year later. But the Alliance's location was betrayed, and Darth Vader's fleet nearly wiped them out. General Dodonna sacrificed his ship and his life to hold off the Super Star Destroyer Executor while other rebel ships fled. Cole Tackbright was a rebel pilot that was frequently mistaken for Wedge Antilles, which earned him the nickname Fake Wedge among his peers. Despite his own talent, he always seemed to find himself in Wedge's shadow, and he began to resent his fellow pilot. His attitude kept him grounded during the Battle of Yavin, and he was furious to learn that Luke Skywalker, a newly recruited farm boy, would be flying in his place. But after seeing the valor of Luke and Wedge during their attack against the Death Star, he set aside his anger and congratulated Antilles. Tackbright was played by Colin Higgins in A New Hope, and he actually was meant to be Wedge Antilles, but the actor was replaced by Dennis Lawson for the rest of the film. That earned the character the nickname Fake Wedge, which was then made canon thanks to Jason Fry's story Duty Roster in the book From a Certain Point of View. Wedge Antilles is one of the most famous side characters in all of Star Wars. He grew up working at a fuel depot on Corellia and became a gifted pilot. He earned a spot at an elite TIE fighter training academy called Skystrike, but during his training decided to defect to the Rebellion. He and his fellow cadet Hobby escaped thanks to Sabine Wren and Phoenix Squadron. He fought with them for months until their base was discovered by Grand Admiral Thrawn, and the whole Rebel cell relocated to Yavin 4. He was injured on a mission that required him to be grounded for the Battle of Scarif and the theft of the Death Star plans, but was cleared to fly in the Battle of Yavin. His X-Wing was damaged during the trench run, causing him to lose all maneuverability, and he had to retreat. After the Death Star's destruction, he continued to fly with Red Squadron until the formation of Rogue Squadron at the Battle of Mako Ta. He survived the Battle of Hoth, but in the aftermath, Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa went missing. Wedge was placed in charge of the defense of the fleet and the rendezvous point until they returned. He flew as Red Leader in the Battle of Endor and was instrumental in the destruction of the second Death Star. He then took part in Project Starhawk by capturing Imperial Star Destroyers for the New Republic to be transformed into their own capital ships. Over the course of the next year, he fell in love with a pilot named Nora Wexley. They eventually married, making Wedge the stepfather to Snap Wexley. He and Nora retired for a time, training the next generation of pilots like Snap and Poe Dameron. But when the First Order rose from the ashes of the Empire, they both returned to the fight. Biggs Darklighter was the childhood friend of Luke Skywalker as they grew up together on Tatooine. They became talented pilots even as children by practicing their skills flying through Beggar's Canyon on their homeworld. When he was old enough, Biggs joined the Imperial Academy to finally leave what he and Luke considered to be boring lives in the middle of nowhere. But Darklighter quickly learned the terrible truth of the Empire. When he was stationed on the Imperial ship the Rand Ecliptic, he helped start a mutiny and defected to the Rebel Alliance. There he became friends with another pilot, Jack Porkin. Porkins. At some point, Biggs returned home to visit Luke at Tashi Station, warning the younger man about the dangers of the Empire and telling him of his choice to join the rebellion. They reunited again just before the Battle of Yavin and flew together down the trench to destroy the Death Star. Biggs gave his life to protect Luke, who made the shot that destroyed the superweapon. Garvin Dreis was a decorated pilot from the Clone Wars, flying in the Virajansi Rarefied Air Cavalry along with Antok Merrick. When the Empire rose to power, they rejected positions in the Imperial Navy and elected to offer their services to rebel cells. They were early members of the official Rebel Alliance after its formation in the year 2 BBY. Merrick was given the rank of General and command of Blue Squadron, while Dreis took command of Red Squadron. He flew as Red Leader in both the Battle of Scarif and the Battle of Yavin. He navigated down the Death Star's trench to take a shot at the thermal exhaust port, but was unsuccessful in destroying the station. He was killed by Darth Vader immediately after. Jek Porkins was from the planet Bestine 4. When the Empire established a base on his homeworld, he immediately sought out the rebellion to aid in the fight against Imperial oppression. He flew with the Tirfan Yellow Aces until the Empire cracked down on their sector, forcing them to join the larger Rebel Alliance on Yavin 4. There he became fast friends with fellow pilot Biggs Darklighter. He flew with Red Squadron in the Battle of Scarif, helping secure the plans for the Death Star, and joined the attack against the superweapon itself, where he became the first casualty in the Battle of Yavin. John Dutch Vander was a rebel pilot from Onderon, the same system as Saw Gerrera. He was originally an Imperial pilot who defected after he refused to bomb his own people. By the year 2 BBY, he was the leader of Gold Squadron in the Massassi Group Rebel Cell. When Mon Mothma delivered a speech holding Emperor Palpatine responsible for the Gorman massacre, Rebel agent Cassian Andor got her to safety. She was picked up by another ship and Gold Squadron escorted her to Dantooine. With the help of Phoenix Squadron, they evaded the Empire, and Mothma gave another speech rallying the various rebel cells into a unified alliance. Dutch continued serving as Gold Leader for 2 more years, fighting in the Battle of Scarif to steal the Death Star plans, and then giving his life attempting to destroy the superweapon. Did you know this pilot who shoots down a rebel fighter during the Battle of Yavin is a major Star Wars character? The TIE fighter pilot who went by the call sign Sigma 3 is actually Iden Versio, the star of the video game Battlefront 2. She was raised on the planet Vardos, where her people were intensely loyal to the Empire. Her father, Garrick Versio, was an admiral in the Imperial Security Bureau, and her mother, Zihei, designed Imperial propaganda. Iden was destined for Imperial greatness, and when the Death Star's construction was complete, she was stationed on board as a senior lieutenant. She witnessed the destruction of Jedha City and Alderaan and fought in the Battle of Yavin, but her ship was disabled in the Death Star's explosion. She crash-landed on Yavin 4 and stole a ship behind enemy lines to return to the Empire. She was then assigned to lead Inferno Squad, a special forces unit who went on covert missions against rebel cells. She helped destroy what was left of the Partisans after the death of Saw Gerrera, fought against Crimson Dawn during their Syndicate War, and helped keep vital information about the Battle of Endor a secret from the rebellion. After the death of the Emperor, Operation Cinder was activated, which resulted in attacks on even loyal Imperial worlds like Vardos. This caused Iden Versio to defect and join the New Republic, fighting with them for a year until their victory at the Battle of Jakku. She had a family with another defecting member of Inferno Squad named Del Miko and raised their daughter Zay in peace. But when the First Order rose to power and destroyed Hosnian Prime, she fought back. She and her daughter helped deliver First Order schematics to the Resistance, but Iden perished during the mission. That brings us to the end of all the essential Glup Shittos from A New Hope. Let me know who I left off the list you'd like to see included in potential future volumes. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.